Okay, y'all asked for it. You want these cheap Chinese knockoff carburetors run on a vehicle to see how they run? Well, today we're going to test it. God help me with that fire extinguisher. A couple of quick things about these carburetors before we get them on the truck. Now, several of these when we did the teardown videos, and I'll leave links to each one of those down in the description if you want to take a look at them. But some of these were truly bad. I mean, things were literally, quite literally loose on these carburetors. The worst of the worst was, I believe, this one, where most of the hardware holding down the throttle plates was so loose that any amount of vibration is going to loosen those things up. And I don't know about you, but I don't want, one or two or any screws falling down inside of a engine that I care about. So I spent a lot of time on these carburetors, putting them back together, fixing some of the problems, taking care of the issues where fitment was wrong, floats didn't work right, replaced, I think, both of the floats in that one because the seams were jacked up on it. It's a big deal if you're buying a new carburetor. It should never be that way, but floats aren't that big of a deal. I was able to make the Edelbrock ones work in that carburetor, so I'm assuming probably the other two, but I didn't really verify that. It's been a while since I've had my hands on some of these. I think this is the first one that I had 3 years ago that I did a video on when I first got it. And it's probably, out of all of them, it's probably the one that's, I won't say it's the best, but it's the one that I didn't, there was issues, but it was all, physical issues of the carburetor, not how it was assembled, and the cheapness or the quality or lack of quality of the components. Kind of funny that the first one 3 years ago is better than these other ones that we've seen here recently. Again, the hardware side of it is what really is terrifying. And I know jokingly I had the fire extinguisher out here, but if you watch the video that we did on the Holly carburetor, that thing leaked everywhere, and that's my biggest concern. I'm happy to test these. I'm happy to see what the AFR looks like, see how they drive, they run, start, cold start, hot start. Go put it through the paces. I'm completely happy to do that, but not at the expense of burning down my truck and destroying, something that I put a lot of time, effort, and money into. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and get these on there. I'm not sure the order I'm going to go in on the vehicle. I think what I'll do is I will start with the oldest one, and I think that was the second and that was the third, so I may just go in order, but anyway, we'll try to annotate that on the screen so you know which carburetor it is, but I'm almost certain we'll go with this one. So let's do that. Today's kind of a funky day. Got quite a bit of rain. It may take me a week or so to go through all this test, but I'm going to go ahead and get these one more time kind of looked back over just to verify. Again, I have to protect my investment as well too, but I think we're pretty much dialed in. So let's get out to the GMC and we'll start with that process out there and put the first one to test. What we're going to do with these is, again, I will set idle mixture and idle speed. I will use the AFR and a vacuum gauge with that so you can see what that looks like live. And then we will take the carburetor, get it up to operating temperature, and then just go take it for a drive and do the exact same thing. We'll measure or monitor AFR, vacuum, and RPM so we know where we're at. And we should be able to see all those events happen. The weighted air valve is fun because those are very easy to see on an AFR. The AVS2 is fun to see because you can see when that secondary flap opens and the boosters actually start flowing fuel. And I suspect we'll hopefully be able to see the same things on here. And I'll try to point those out in the video when they occur, but you'll see it because AFR changes pretty dramatically. Let's get out to the GMC and get this one bolted on and we'll get rolling. Should have everything ready to go to be hooked up here. I think I'll be able to use the fuel line. That's kind of sketchy. I may have to kind of rig that up a little bit. Shouldn't be any big deal. I've got plenty of fittings in here that I can remove and put a barbed end on that. Should be okay. But I guess the biggest concern I'm going to have with this is going to be the leaks. So we have to really watch that. Try to set the idle mixture and all that. So Let me do this. Let me get this 1905 off of here and start adding whatever the first carburetor is to test. And yeah, wish me luck, and hope that I don't burn my truck to the ground, please. All right, just a couple of things. It's raining pretty good here, but I'm gonna go ahead and try and get this one knocked out. One little detail is the 700R4 adapter doesn't fit on there very well, and it also kind of covers up the idle mixture or the fast idle. So if you were operating an electric choke and you needed the fast idle, you're gonna have a little bit of a difficult time with it. It doesn't really give you a lot of access to it, so not a huge deal, but it's because the hardware is so big and not thought through that whatever. So anyway, I primed it with fuel, and other than that, we'll go grab the fire extinguisher and see what happens when I start this thing up. So let's give it a shot. One thing I forgot about these idle mixture screws is they're very odd in, you know, when the spring is tight, it's understandable that they'll be a little, you know, weird, but the problem is the spring catches on there because they don't have the base on there that narrows to keep it from catching the underside of the screw. So when you're turning the idle mixture screw, you're turning the spring. So anyway, again, just cheap cuts, cutting corners, whatever. Guess it's not that big of a deal, but it is annoying. So let me get the AFR out, and we'll get this thing started. I'll crank that open a little bit more, just simply because it's cold, and cold, it's 75 degrees here, but engine's cold. So let's see what we did here. A little more speed. And we are pouring fuel out of this. So the connection was tight, and I think that's okay, but you can see the fuel just pouring out of the secondary shaft. So I'll pop that back open and just verify that the floats were right. But yeah, something's kind of funky there, but yeah. So let me get it back off, and we'll get the top off and see if we can figure out what's going on. Okay, this is the driver's side. We can figure out exactly what happened. Not so much here or here, but here. Yeah, a little Tommy Boy reference for some of y'all. So again, this carburetor's never been run, and we had seen that on some of the other ones before, that the floats were a little funky, and that's what happened, gave up. So that's why I was pushing fuel through there. So I've got parts to fix it, but again, man, these look ugly for just sitting around in the box with no fuel or anything in it for 3 years, but whatever. So I'm going to replace both the floats. I'll recheck the needle and seats, and then, okay, we'll get back out there. But yeah, I mean, I've got tons of parts here. Obviously, it's kind of what I do for a living, but yeah, if you were stuck on your own here, you'd be like, well, I'm just going to send it back and get another one, which you're obviously able to do, but what a waste of time. Okay, well, we didn't burn the engine down. Here's another little issue. Shame on me for not checking it, but they also Loctited the seat into the air horn assembly, which is kind of funny. So I'm going to clean that out of there. Okay, I think we've got this all set. Needle and seats and floats are set. I went ahead and replaced both of those. Just don't trust this one. It was starting to show some little cracks in it as well. I went ahead and replaced the needle and seats as well too. The more I got to looking at it, I just wasn't really happy with that. That is a rubber tip on there. It's not like a Viton tip. Not going to matter for the amount of time, but if I was going to run this for any length of time, it would. Now, again, I guess I didn't take these out when I did the initial teardown of this carburetor and inspection it, but they both have double gaskets in it. The problem with that is it was not allowed able to allow the float to be adjusted correctly because the stack height was too high on it. So the problem with that was you couldn't get that good clean operation out of the needle and seats. So hopefully that hour worth of farting around with it, replacing needle and seats and floats was able to get this back. So let me get this back assembled, and hopefully we can beat the rain and get this thing started up and see what happens. And unfortunately it's raining pretty good here now, so let's see. Alright, we cured our leak. Idling a little rich, a little high, but we did that on purpose, so unfortunately you see the rain coming down. Not ideal, but alright, it's a little on the fat side. I'm okay with that. Let me let it sit here for another minute or two and see how she does. Okay, I'm going to let it idle for a little bit. I can't really tell out there, but the air cleaner's back on it, so I'm going to continue to play with the idle AFR, and then when this rain lets up a little bit, it's not supposed to, it's actually supposed to come down harder, so we'll see what I might be done for the day here on it, but we'll come back to it when we get ready to drive it. Wow, look how lean that is. That's at cruise. That is way too lean. All right, so some of that's transfer slot, because look, we're down at idle, we're back really rich. And other of that is step-up springs, which we can't change. Now the truck is running in driving. It's got a little bit of a lean surge to it, but I'm hypersensitive to it. Really bad. Settling back, but look at those spikes and the lean. Dude, that's really, really bad. Vacuum gauge is down just a hair. We're about 16, 15, which is a little lower than normal, so make another run down this road. Now, if I just ignore the AFR, and just drive it, I would say, other than that little lean miss that I'm getting, that this is not, I mean, it runs, drives, it has a little bit of a hot start issue. But back down here at idle, we're right kind of where we set it. I set it back a little fatter than what I was. It didn't like it at 14.2 somewhere in there. So 13.5-ish is probably average. But yeah, so now, is that really lean condition good for the engine? Absolutely not. Regardless of what anybody tells you, and people are going to argue about this in the comments, I get it, I understand, but running it that lean is not a good condition for an engine that is designed for more performance application. If you want to try to lean it out on a stock motor, fine, go for it. But something that's got a hotter cam, hotter ignition, absolutely not. That is, in my estimation, in a danger zone. See how far we spike up at cruise? We're 50 miles per hour. Now we just shifted into high gear, drop down, fourth gear, 1700 RPM, 56 mile per hour. And the AFR is a touch better, maybe? Not much. Still don't like that at 15, 16. You're not in melting piston territory quite yet, but that is not good. And idle settles back down around, back in around that 13.5. So again, I can see where someone that is not understanding of how a carburetor works and you know, accepting what is happening with just driving, that seems okay. Now, if that was hovering right around 14 and a half, I think you could argue that's probably not horrible. It's not where I would want to be on an engine, again, with a little bit hotter cam profile, a little bit more compression. You need a little bit more fuel. All right, I'm going to run in real quick, grab something to drink, and then we'll see what happens. Let's see what hot restart looks like. Not bad. On the AFR, on a restart, it's kind of weird how it rolls, but it's starting to settle back down in, I guess, but very inconsistent. I believe that's fuel delivery just on the idle side, so. Very lean, very lean. That, I believe, is because the step-up springs are not releasing. Now, we could dial that in with the right step-up spring, but because we want to test this carburetor as is, I'm going to leave it as is. And again, we're cruising at 40 miles per hour, and that is just way too lean. It does. It's got that. It has a lean sound to it. All right, I added a little bit more fuel pressure, so let's see if it likes 6.5 and it cures that lean condition a little bit. Maybe it's not getting enough fuel. Nope, more fuel on the flow side didn't help. I do believe that is transfer slot and step-up spring is part of our problem here. Yeah, no effect on it. That's a transfer slot sizing issue. We're in the main metering circuit now. At that speed, that RPM. And I don't believe the step-up springs are allowing the jet to meter the full amount of fuel. And also, too, I'd have to look back at that video to see how those measured. So, weighted air valve opens. Oh man, that is lean. It took all the power out of it. Wow. No power. I mean, I'm pushing the gas down pretty decent, and I cannot get it to. Also speeding past this police station. Wow. Alright, I'm going to call this one a fail. Alright, let's talk about this one really quick. I monkeyed with the fuel pressure quite a bit. I tried to add a little bit more, took it back away, took more away, just see if leaning it out was going to change. It didn't. Accelerator pump, not really a huge improvement, but putting it in the hole closest to it, furthest to it. It's got another adjustment on the bottom. Not really any improvement there. Again, I do believe that the issue is transfer slots aren't the greatest. They could probably be opened up a little bit, but again, that is very technical, very complicated, and you get one shot at it. You screw it up, it's over with. The other side of it, again, is I believe the step-up springs are limiting what we're able to do here. So when trying to transition into more power, it could be the weighted air valve isn't properly, doesn't have the same grams to it. I would have to check that. You could swap one out of the 1406 and see. Man, you're going to fight this thing over and over and over again, and the thing that concerns me the most is that lean condition. You're not going to get that out of there. Does it cruise and drive down the road okay? That's arguable, but yes, it did. Was it where it needed to be? Absolutely not, and there's no way to adjust that. So carburetor number 1 is a fail. Okay, electric choke carburetor number 2. Went back through it. The only thing that was really, really odd about this one is the idle mixture screws. Typically they are, and I'm used to the Edelbrock obviously because that's what I work on quite a bit of, so I'm not exactly sure how weird that is, but those, when I took the springs off, dropped it all the way down to set the depth measurement so I knew how far it was when it would be fully seated, so you don't break the tips off of it. Common little practice that I do on carburetors, but it's certainly helpful on this one. The depth that these would seat is not, how do I put this? You couldn't collapse that spring enough. You'd have to cut like probably 2 coils out of there to get this to seat all the way down. So they're really tight up against there. So I backed these out 2 full turns, and I'm hoping it's going to be close, because if we have to go much tighter than that, I'm going to have to take the mixture screws back out and cut the coils off. So I don't know, weird. So anyway, everything else was pretty much, just wanted to verify everything was tight, and we did all that. So yeah, all right, let me get out to the truck, get the other one off, and get this one on, and we'll get started. Okay, we're all hooked up, no drama there. Just a couple little issues. That connector for the throttle cable, that hole's a little odd shaped, but I was able to use a smaller size one. I'm going to get this thing fired up before this rain gets poured down, see if we can at least get this thing started, verify there's no leaks, and start looking at tuning the idle circuit. So let's see what happens. Yeah, she's idling horrible. You can see why. Look at the AFR. Well, she idles funny. We're at full operating temperature, and we talked about those mixture screws being kind of funky. I think that's the reason why we're kind of dancing back and forth. Seems like the RPM was surging a little bit there for a minute. Need to add a little bit more fuel pressure into it, but that's plenty at idle. You could drop down to 3 at idle and be just fine. 3 PSI anyway. So let's let it warm up for a minute, settle down, and see what happens. Watch what happens when we start moving. I've had to pull over like 20 times. Wow. Let's see if we can put some more fuel in it. It's literally just not. Let's see if it comes back up at idle. Wow. Let's see if we can add some more idle fuel to it again, but it keeps changing. It's like all over the place. I get it set at 13.3, 13.5 at idle, and then it comes back to this. Unless it's running out of fuel, unless the needle and seats aren't working. That's crazy. All right, let me see if I can add some more idle fuel to it. See what happens when I give it gas? Look how drastic that is. Goes right back to 13.5. It's literally so lean. Even at 2,000 RPM, look at that. There's 3 grand, it's at 18 to 1. Let me see if I'll change the accelerator pump setting. Maybe it'll give it a little bit more shot of fuel, but wow, that's crazy. I think you can see that float sight is just a little above the sight glass, the line there. It's actually pretty good. So it's got plenty of fuel. There are no vacuum leaks on it. We're completely plugged on everywhere we need to be, so wow. All right, let's try to limp her home and see if we can figure out what was going on. It's the throttle shafts. The throttle shafts are so loose. Oh yeah, that primary one is so loose. It's pulling a lot of air through it. Look how fat that I have it at idle, 12.6. And I'll see if I can get while I spray it. Goes all the way down to 11. Those are so loose. I guess the secondary one as well too. Okay, well, I wasn't expecting that. That wasn't on my bingo card. As soon as I pulled away, I was like, okay, well, I got a vacuum leak or something. It was going super, super lean. Wouldn't idle, wouldn't even cruise. I had plenty of fuel in the float bowls. Tried to add a little bit more pump to it. That didn't really help too much, but I guess it's just one of those things I should have checked from the get-go because, well, I wasn't really expecting that. There's nothing I can do with this one. We're dead in the water on this one. I really, as it was going together, it didn't look too bad, like I say, other than the idle mixture screws, and I guess I just didn't really pay attention to the throttle shafts. Third time's a charm. So carburetor number 3. This one didn't really fight me too much. The fuel inlet did. Had to do some little work there to get that thing to go in there, but I think it will be okay. I need to watch that right away, make sure it's not leaking. So that'll be my priority when I fire this thing up, is to run over there and check that out. Dump some fuel down this thing and let's see if we can fire it up. Another lean one, really lean. Like that. Doesn't appear to have any vacuum leaks, so certainly likes more idle mixture, that's for sure. Let me play with that a little bit, see if we can get her to stabilize out at. Been having a hard time getting this one to stabilize out. We're at full operating temperature. We checked for vacuum leaks. We're good there. I need to play with the floats a little bit. The interesting thing about this one, I think this is the last one we looked at. It's got those external adjustments, which are really kind of handy, but I also have the little window over there, but it's a little weird, so I may have to play with that as I cruise it around. So let me take it, now that we got some temperature in it. I'm not extremely happy with the AFR at 13.2, 13.0, but go ahead and see if we can take it for a little cruise. It's starting to pour down rain again, so I may wait a few minutes. So let me do that. I'm getting soaked. Man, she's gutless. I've been trying to put a few miles on this thing. The problem is we are not operating very well. Let me see if it's, I mean, at idles where I set it at, 13.2, 13.0, it's really lean. As soon as I start to kind of operate it, I mean, pegged lean. So let me see if I can add more fuel to the float bowls. Maybe that's it. We'll try that adjustment first. All right, it's what I was running into when I was trying to set the floats. Is the problem is these adjustments are very difficult to make because again, they restrict the operation of the float. So I think what I'm going to do is try to make it back home and then get the top off this thing and see if we can try to figure out a way around that. I like the design of it, but you can hear it starting to cut out already. I like the design of it, but see how it picks right back up? It's allowing fuel into it. Kind of starting to die down. Yeah, we're pegged lean. Like it's running out of fuel. Let me see if I can add a little bit more to it. See if that helps. Like I say, that those floats are really weird. I'll show you what's going on with these floats and then we'll wrap this thing up. So the external adjustments, like I said, I don't dislike that. I think what it is that manufacturer of this carburetor must do some OE style knockoffs as well. And they just took that from an OE style carburetor. But if you look, you can make that float adjustment from the underside. Float's heading down. You can raise and lower, and that's not a bad thing. The problem is to get that where it's right, where it's good, you have to really spend quite a long time getting the floats adjusted correctly. You can see how this one is very limited. That one's pretty close. I imagine the drop's just a little bit deep on that one, no problem. But after just adjusting this a couple of times, what it's done is it's changed the float adjustment. And I think that's the problem, is because these floats were not designed to be used with that type of system where you're changing the height, and what it is doing is not allowing a full movement. I think it's just a little bit of a redesign that they probably should have done. I think what they did is they had a carburetor, they just knocked it off and whatever. So I'm 90% sure that was the reason why we're getting the lean condition on this carburetor. Let's talk about the results of this, and then I have one final test for all three of these carburetors. I guess it's what I expected. The very first video that we did 3 years ago, when having that discussion with the Edelbrock engineer, they described the carburetor and its performance as erratic. And I think that's pretty accurate. You can keep continuing to chase things, but even on that first carburetor, which I think was this one, or it was this one, I believe, we were still chasing issue. It drove okay. It had some lean miss. It was down on power for sure. But the car started, operated, run, drove, whatever. But it just had a condition where we couldn't get the lean mixture out of it. Now, again, could I go in and try to adapt some jets, change some length on the Edelbrock metering rods and maybe try to figure it out? Yeah, probably. But the problem with that is I would have days worth of farting around with this thing, and it's not worth it. If you go on to Alibaba.com, Temu even allows you to see a lot of that. Alibaba is a wholesale type of website where you can go on there, put in the type of product that you're looking for, and you'll find those wholesale deals where you have to buy these in lots of 4 or 10 or 20 or whatever, and you can get them for $30. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but go check it out. And that's where you see a lot of that. A lot of folks here will try to make a little bit of money, import in some garbage, and then they're stuck with the warranty return side of things. But if you get one like that first one we tested, someone may assume, well, Al, it's just I guess that's just the way it runs. They just put up with it. And that's the big problem with all of that stuff. It is so easy to buy knockoff garbage and bring it into this country. Well, it was anyway. Right now it's getting a little bit more complicated with tariffs and all those other things. Hopefully it'll maybe slow down a little bit of it. But really at the end of the day, the consumer is the one that's going to pay it. And as prices go higher with inflation and everything else, well, sometimes these even, still are a pretty good deal for buying garbage that just doesn't work. 3 carburetors, 3 failures, that's what it is. So let's do the one final last test for this thing, and we'll call this one good.